Imagine walking down the street, minding your own business, when suddenly you're stopped and questioned by the police. Most people might feel nervous or unsure of what to do next, but not this guy. He knew his rights, stayed calm, and handled the situation like a pro. In today's video, we're diving into another intense First Amendment audit where an everyday citizen stands his ground and refuses to give up his ID without just cause. The encounter starts off routine, but it doesn't take long before tensions start to rise. The officers insist on seeing identification, but our guy isn't backing down. He knows exactly what the law says, and he's not afraid to remind them. You can almost feel the pressure building as the officers try to assert their authority, but he stays cool, collected, and completely in control. Will the officers respect his rights, or will things escalate even further? Stick around to find out how he navigates this challenging situation with confidence and composure. This is one First Amendment audit you won't want to miss. Let's get into it. As the conversation continues, the officer becomes increasingly frustrated by the refusal to provide identification. He tries every tactic in the book, asking for names, stating it's for official purposes, and even hinting at potential consequences. But our guy remains firm. He understands the boundaries of his rights, and he's not going to let the pressure get to him. His calm demeanor seems to unsettle the officers, who expected a quicker submission. It's clear that this is not the first time he's been in a situation like this. His body language speaks volumes. There's no hesitation, no sign of doubt. This man knows what's at stake. And despite the mounting tension, he doesn't flinch when the officers start to crowd around him, trying to box him into a corner. Every word he speaks is measured, deliberate, and backed by a strong understanding of the law. But here's where things get complicated. One officer, seemingly trying to assert dominance, makes an unexpected move. The crowd starts to gather, and now the situation has the potential to escalate rapidly. Is this going to turn into a confrontation? Will the officers respect his rights, or is something else at play here? The clock is ticking, and the story is far from over. The tension in the air is palpable now. The officers exchange glances, their frustration growing as they realize their usual tactics aren't working. They're not used to someone standing up to them like this, especially in public. The crowd is growing larger, and some bystanders begin to take out their phones, recording the entire interaction. The officer who made the aggressive move earlier starts pacing, trying to figure out the next step. The man, still calm and unshaken, doesn't break eye contact. He knows that this is bigger than just a simple exchange. It's about setting a precedent, one that will resonate not just for him, but for anyone who faces an overstep of authority. He's aware that any wrong move, any hint of aggression, could escalate this situation into something far more serious. But he's playing it smart, giving no ammunition for the officers to justify their next step. From the officers' perspective, the situation is frustrating. They're trained to assert authority, and this kind of defiance feels like a challenge to their power. One officer even steps forward, asserting that they'll have to take things further if he continues to refuse. But the man counters with a reminder of his rights, citing specific legal grounds that leave the officers with little room to maneuver. The standoff continues. The clock is ticking, and each passing second makes it feel like the situation could go either way. The crowd, now fully engaged, watches intently. Some are quietly supportive of the man, others seem unsure of what will happen next. The officers, meanwhile, can't shake the feeling that something has shifted in this encounter. It's no longer about a simple ID check. It's about the principle, and they're starting to realize it's not going to be easy to win this one. The air feels thick with tension now, the officers visibly rattled by the man's unwavering stance. The silence between words is almost deafening, each second stretching longer than the last. One officer pulls out his radio, likely to request backup, but even that move feels desperate, as if he's unsure of the next step. The man's calm confidence seems to be shifting the dynamic in ways the officers hadn't anticipated. The bystanders, too, seem on edge. Some are whispering among themselves. Others are holding their phones up, recording every moment, unsure of what they might witness next. The officer pacing back and forth, clearly irritated, mutters under his breath, and the tension builds even further. The crowd can sense it. Everyone is waiting for the inevitable to happen. Then, without warning, one officer takes a step forward, his voice sharp as he demands compliance once again. His tone is more aggressive, more forceful now. He's trying to provoke a reaction, trying to push the man to the point where they can justify taking control of the situation. The man stands his ground, unwavering. He responds slowly but with authority, reminding the officer of his constitutional rights. His words echo in the air, ringing louder than the officer's orders. The standoff feels like it's teetering on the edge of something monumental. The crowd shifts uneasily, the officers seeming to grow more frustrated with each passing second. The man's confidence doesn't waver, but there's a crackle in the air, a sense that this could all come crashing down in an instant. Will the officers break and back down, or will they escalate things to a point of no return? The weight of the moment is heavy, and no one knows how it will end. Just as the tension reaches a breaking point, something unexpected happens. A second squad car pulls up, its sirens cutting through the silence like a knife. The officers who were already on edge exchange nervous glances, clearly surprised by the additional presence. The new officer, a tall figure with a commanding presence, steps out of the vehicle. His eyes immediately lock onto the situation, and without saying a word, he approaches, his movements calculated and deliberate. The crowd falls even quieter, the new officer's arrival adding an entirely new layer of uncertainty. This isn't just about ID refusal anymore. This is escalating into something much more significant. The man stands tall, unflinching, as the new officer approaches. The air feels even heavier now, as if everyone senses the storm brewing, unsure of how it will unfold. The first officer, who had been trying to keep things under control, now seems to defer to the newcomer. There's a shift in the balance of power, but it's hard to tell who is in control anymore. The second officer eyes the man carefully, sizing him up before speaking. He doesn't ask for ID right away, but instead makes a statement about the situation getting out of hand. His tone is calmer, but there's an undeniable edge to it. The crowd, sensing the shift, grows even more still. The cameras are now all trained on the officers, their faces painted with a mixture of curiosity and concern. One wrong move, and this could spiral completely out of control. The man, now facing a second officer, doesn't flinch. He stands his ground, but the stakes are higher now. He's not just facing one officer. He's facing an entire system that might be about to push back in ways he can't predict. The question looms in the air. Is the second officer here to de-escalate? Or is this just the calm before the storm? The crowd holds its breath, waiting for the next move. The second officer stands there for a moment, his eyes scanning the scene, clearly weighing his options. The crowd is silent, waiting for a shift in the air. The tension is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. But instead of escalating things, the second officer surprises everyone by stepping back slightly and speaking in a much softer tone. He addresses the first officer, telling him they need to consider the bigger picture here. This isn't just about enforcing a minor rule. It's about respecting rights and maintaining public trust. The first officer, still visibly frustrated, looks like he wants to argue, but instead he pauses. He glances at the crowd, then at his partner, and for the first time, his demeanor softens. He seems to take a deep breath, as if he realizes the situation could spiral out of control if they don't back off. The man, still calm, doesn't let his guard down. His eyes meet the new officer's, who gives him a slight nod. It's subtle but clear. They've reached a tipping point. And just like that, the officers begin to retreat. The first officer looks like he's ready to argue one last time, but the second officer, with his quiet authority, signals for him to back off. They slowly start to walk away, the scene beginning to dissolve. But just as the crowd starts to breathe a collective sigh of relief, a new figure steps out from the back of the crowd, someone who has been recording the entire time. It's a lawyer who had been watching the whole interaction unfold. As the officers begin to drive away, the lawyer steps forward and, in a calm but firm voice, calls out to the man, offering his services and making it clear that what just happened could be used to challenge the system in court. The twist catches everyone off guard. The man's quiet victory over the officers wasn't the final piece of the puzzle. It turns out the battle for his rights may have only just begun. And this lawyer might be the one to take it even further, turning the entire incident into a catalyst for change. The stakes have shifted again, but now the man has even more power on his side. The crowd disperses, buzzing with the unexpected turn of events, and the story lingers in the air, leaving everyone wondering what will happen next. As the crowd slowly disperses, the man stands there, processing everything that just happened. The lawyer, still standing by, hands him a business card, offering a chance to pursue a case that could make waves. The officers, now in their squad cars, drive away without saying another word. The entire encounter feels surreal, but it's clear that something important has just shifted. The man had held his ground, not only defending his rights, but standing up for something bigger. The idea that anyone, regardless of the situation, deserves respect and fairness. His decision to stay calm and composed in the face of authority, despite the pressure, has set an example for others who may face similar situations. His victory wasn't just about walking away unscathed. It was about demonstrating the power of knowledge, of knowing your rights and standing firm when needed. In the end, the man didn't just walk away from the scene. He walked away with the possibility of something much larger, a chance to make a real change. The officers left, but the lesson stayed behind. This wasn't just a First Amendment audit. It was a reminder that ordinary citizens can make a difference when they stand up for what's right. As the camera pans out, the words "Know Your Rights" flash on the screen. The story isn't over, but for now, the man's peaceful resolution feels like a small victory for everyone who values justice.